Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Dolls of Horror podcast, the spot to feed your tormented addiction. I'm Summer.
I'm Jamie.
Oh, we have a special guest, Jamie.
We sure do.
It is none other than Kevin Van Hentenryck. Did I say that correctly?
You did. You did. Thank you.
Good
Good.
job.
We weren't sure when we did the episodes on Basket Case if we were massacring your name the entire time.
I know it's daunting.
It is. It's a tough one, but we got it right. So there we go. Point one for
Yeah.
us. How are you doing this evening, Kevin?
I'm excellent. Thank you guys for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on to the show. We've been stoked about this all week. We've had Basket Case on the brain for weeks and weeks and weeks because we just did
Oh,
all of them on
months.
the show.
We started in
Months.
January, so months.
Yeah. Good.
Having-
Good stuff to have in our head.
So do you
Having-
guys have a favorite of the three of them?
Probably
gee.
one for part one for me, I think. But
Yeah,
it's-
part
it's-
one.
Yeah.
They all feel so different. So it's kind of what kind of mood are you in, and
Yeah.
how do you like your movies? I prefer the feel of part one. I think Jamie does too.
I do too. It's got that very kind of mean city feel to it. And I like
Mhm.
when the city has that mean feel to it.
Yeah. New York City definitely had that in the mid '70s.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite? I know they're all like your children.
first
Do
one
you
is
have a
mine.
favorite?
Yeah. Because of the way we made it, it was part time. We started in '79. We spent almost a year filming. Like we would do a few scenes, and then Frank would do an assemblage and show it to people, get more money, and repeat. And we spent a year doing that. So it was kind of more like a family project.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Tell us, how did you get involved with Basket Case and meet Frank, and how did this all happen for you?
One of the places I studied was the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Lower Manhattan. And Ilsa, who plays the social worker with the glasses,
Oh, yeah.
was the assistant registrar there. And Ruth Newman, who plays our aunt in the film, was the registrar. And anyways, one day Ilsa says to me, "I know this guy that makes movies. You should meet him." So I said, "Okay," and I met him. We seemed to get along well. And shortly after that, I did 3 extra parts in the film prior to Basket Case called Slash of the Knife. And I was always on this. He was using friends to do to do everything. Put down that light, come in here and say, blah blah blah. So I was always on his case to use student actors. We needed the experience and the reel and all that. And I think he liked the way I worked, and I was the right type for what he had in mind. A few months later, he called me up with this idea for a film, and was I interested? And I said, sure, And he, on the spot, on the phone, did the film for me. And when Frank does a pitch, he does it 100%.
Oh.
Acting it out, and the emphasis in the right spots. And he said, "Are you interested?" So that was it.
Wow. And how does that kind of compare to, filming the other 2 films? Because the other ones had a slightly bigger budget. How was it different?
Oh, it's completely different. Second and third one were union films. So, for example, if it's a union film, you have to have a union driver, but you can't just have a driver. You have to have 2 drivers and a captain. So everything becomes more complicated with the budget. It enables a higher quality level, but it also kicks up the craziness level substantially.
Sure.
And they were all fun. Like I said, the first film was more like a family film. We spent a year making it. Ilsa would make lunches. We'd go to weird places. Like one day we went to the Statue of Liberty, and as we're getting there, before we get off the ferry, Frank says, now, technically, we're not supposed to be here. The way it's worded is if you had have a tripod. So we didn't use a tripod. He handheld those shots. He said, we're going to do this once and run. So get it right.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah.
Love that.
And you told me that your background was from the theater,
Yes.
right? So how did that benefit you in this type of filmmaking? Did you have to have lots of rehearsals, to make sure you got it right before you actually filmed it on the film?
That's actually a really important point because often, Frank, so this was shot in 16 millimeter
Mhm.
film, in the old days, and they were using what's called short ends. In other words, it was a kind of a discounted way to buy 16 millimeter film stock.
Okay.
And so often Frank would say, we have enough film for one take. So we're going to rehearse it till everybody has it cold. And being from the theater, we like rehearsal.
Yes.
So
Yep.
yeah. So we would do that, and that's the way I prefer to work. I mean, I've also gotten good results, improving scenes or parts of scenes or stuff. But generally, if everybody knows what they're doing and has got it, the effect is better.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, definitely. And what would you say was the most challenging part of shooting Basket Case? Any of the three?
Mhm. Well, the second and two and three, again, were different because we were on location and a bigger budget. So that brings its own set of problems. As far as the first one, again with film, you have to remember where you were at the end of one scene, so that when the camera's over there now, you can be in the same position. And that's for me always the most important thing on my mind. Um, and it's not just like your position or where you're standing on your mark. It's the intensity level that you're doing whatever you're doing with has to match from one shot to another. And there's a lot of, I'm sure you guys have seen this stuff. There's a lot of video out there of, Arnold in Terminator 2, there's a cigar burn and there's not, then it's back,
Yep.
and in the first film, we didn't have a continuity person, that we did it ourselves. So it's really important to, at the end of a scene, to understand where you were, not only physically, but, as far as the character is concerned. So that's probably for me the most difficult always.
Yeah,
And
that's
how
such
did
a good point. I have like a performance amnesia sometimes. So I'm like
We both
thinking of
do.
like, that must be so challenging sometimes. Sometimes I'll perform and then I forget it like right away, where I'm like, where am I? What was I just doing?
It happens to us after every panel we host and after every recording we do. We have no idea what just happened. Guaranteed, we're not going to remember what just happened when we get off,
It's
and we'll
going to
have
be
to
wonderful, but
watch it again, and we're like, "Oh yeah, that did happen."
yeah.
So how did you remain in that emotional state? Like, how did you keep track of where you were when you went back to film again?
Well, that's where the work comes in.
Mhm.
The business part of being an actor, and rehearsal really helps with that. A question I'm asked often is, how do you remember lines? And I can't remember lines for shit. I'm terrible at that. But
Mhm.
I find that if I do the work necessary on the scene and the character and the actions, by the time I really understand that, I have the lines down and I don't have to learn them. Well, also, everybody works differently. What works for me might not
Yeah.
work for the next guy. Marlon Brando, who was spectacular when he was young, was famous for not learning his lines. So, again, it's all personal preference.
And what was it like? Do you have some memories to share working with Beverly Bonner? We adore her in that movie. I love the scene where you two are at the bar. It's like one of my favorite scenes. So
Yeah.
any memories of Beverly that you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it.
Well, that was a fun scene to do.
Yeah.
Frank knew somebody. I'm not sure if I got the name right here, but there was a club in the Lower East Side. I think it was called the Hellfire Club, which was kind of like a after hours SM club. And Joe, who plays the little guy peeping through the keyhole, he knew somebody there or was associated with the club somehow, and so we got to use that space. And that was a pretty weird space. There was one
Sure.
room, there was a bathtub out in the middle of the room. It was an interesting place to hang out for a night. But yeah, doing that scene with Bev, she was so fantastic. She was so professional and such a great actress, and we really miss her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. And do you have any memories or stories you want to share working with, as we called her on the podcast, Granny Auntie Ruth?
Yeah, yeah,
Annie
yeah.
Ross.
Yeah, she was amazing. Yeah, very professional, great stories. I loved hanging
Yeah.
out with her. We went when we were in Atlanta for the third one. Um, we went out to this place called Blind Willie's, someplace in Atlanta, and saw blues, and it was just fantastic.
Uh,
Um, I love working with her, and she performed in
okay.
at a club in Manhattan till almost her time of passing. Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
Yeah.
she's a very cool lady. Very cool lady.
Yeah.
ah.
Wow.
And so I've been dying to know because one of the sections that we do on our podcast is prop we would like to own. And so we pick the prop from a movie that we'd like to own most. So we'd love to know if you have any props from Basket Case, and if you don't, or if you don't have these, which ones would you
Oh,
want?
He's got a basket. But is that the actual basket?
no, no.
See.
The baskets that we use in the first film, there were several of them. One of them, the bottom was cut out.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
One of them got completely covered in fake blood. So this one, a friend of mine, Margot, who took the sculpture class, gave me this because
Aw.
it's a close match. It has two
Yeah.
latches,
Yep.
where B's only has one, but the texture is nice though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll work just perfectly. Very cool.
Yeah, so props. Yeah, for any serious collectors out there, uh, when I do a con that I can drive to, like Chiller or New Jersey Horror Con, I've done. Um, I I have Baby Belial number 6 from the third film. Bernini is his name.
Oh.
It's screen used, yeah. So I have that.
Wow.
I have the straight jacket from Basket Case 2, screen used.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
I actually have. So when they made the Eve um, effect,
Yes.
they for some reason they had cast Heather Rattray's face, and was that the second or the third? I can't remember which one, but so I have a little bit of foam that has Heather Rattray's face on it.
Ah.
I have the teeth, cast of the teeth of one. I think it was a guy with the metal head plate,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Those are
How
great.
fun.
Can we get a photo op with the Belial? Like, if we ever have the opportunity to see you at one of those Northeast cons, do you take them to your photo ops with you?
I haven't in the past
Sure.
because the photo op thing is fairly recent.
Oh.
Okay.
Um, But
And not all conventions do it also.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. But there's a great the story of the basket case sign, for example. That was Edgar orchestrated that, and that was my second floor studio in Tribeca. That was the fire escape outside the bathroom that we hung
Oh,
that sign on. So whenever you see the
that's
sign, that's my old loft in Tribeca.
No way.
It was before it became Tribeca. It was an abandoned,
wow.
derelict neighborhood in those days. But Edgar had the sign made, and he had a van. We would cruise around the East Village looking for stuff, to use for props and stuff.
Yeah.
And so he built a platform, a wooden platform on top of the van that was just the right height so that when the sign was bolted to the fire escape and I stood on this platform on top of the van, I was the right height. And I had you have a harness underneath your clothes. They
Yeah.
bolted to me to the sign, drove the truck out from under me, and we did the shot.
Wow.
Wow. So that was your home at the time you were
Yeah,
taken
yeah,
outside of.
yeah.
Wow.
I was in Tribeca
Wow.
from 78 to 82.
Wow.
Wow.
Another one of our segments is Epic Line, where we pick one or two or five of our favorite lines. We normally can't
Five.
pick just one in a movie. Like Basket Case, I had a whole
I know.
page. We both did, and we had to narrow it down. It was tough. Do you have an epic line from any of the movies?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. When Terry Susan is going down the stairs and she stops and turns around and she says, "Dwayne!" I love that. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
she's great. I actually got to see an interview with her about Basket Case. It was like oh gosh, like years ago. But it was at the Loft Cinema here. They played it for their first Screamorama they ever had, where they play like, movies for hours and hours, horror movies. And yeah, she actually did an interview for Basket Case. I can't confirm if that's true or not. I heard it was her first time doing an interview about Basket
She
Case.
hasn't done many, no. She
Yeah.
hasn't. And she lives overseas. She's in,
Okay.
well, she's been in Morocco and
Wow.
Switzerland. And so she goes all over the place. So getting her to a con is a bit of a chore.
Yeah. Yeah. Are
Sure,
you still
sure.
in touch?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So, we kind of talked about cons a little bit. How often do you go and what are the con experiences like for you?
I don't do them often. I only do a
Sure.
few every year
Mhm.
because I enjoy them. And like, there's some people I've met, like Ari, the first Jason, and Alex from Chucky.
Yeah.
Those guys do a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and air travel is not cool anymore. All of the hospitality has gone out of that industry.
Mhm.
So I don't want it to become like a job. I want to enjoy it because I do. I love meeting people. This is a project I did 40 years ago that people still like. That's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And you know, at a con, at a given con, most of the people that come up to my table weren't born when we made the film. So it's kind of amazing.
Both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us, we
Yeah.
are we are a big fan of practical effects, like
Uh-huh.
huge. What was some of the most difficult effects to create, especially for the first one with the limited budget that you guys had?
Well, one of my favorites that illustrates, the genius of Frank Henenlotter is um, how do you get Belial to leap out of the basket at the camera when the basket is open? Frank's solution, again, remember this is film. So you have an A-frame ladder. The camera is hung upside down from the ladder. You do the shot with Belial starting in the finished position. He goes down into the basket and the lid closes. You flop the film and show it in reverse. That's Frank.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. Yeah, but um, when you see, so the other thing is there was the Belial and there was a pair of hands, but the hands were really small, and the only one who could fit into them was Frank. So whenever you see the hands with the folder, with the TV knob, that's Frank in the hands.
Aw.
And somewhere in the studio, I have a shot of him when some of the hotel scenes where I think it's the one where he reaches out to change the channel,
Yeah.
but not the close up of the hands, the shot just before that. Um, he's sitting on a bureau, and there was a space. Either they removed the top drawer or something. There was a space. So there's Frank inside there looking through the space to do the hands.
Oh, it sounds like Frank was a hoot to work with.
Yeah, he was. He was. He was. Another one. When his name was Needleman. Needleman. When we get
Uh-huh.
Needleman,
Uh-huh.
we had pizza for dinner that night. So along with the fake blood, the the body part is all squished up pizza. You know,
So good.
it works.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So, I was like curious, being with these characters for so long, Dwayne and Belial, what have you learned about them over all this time?
What a great question. I think to be an actor, you need to have a bit of an understanding of human psychology.
Yeah.
And you also need to be an observer of people. And you start to different bits of action or dialogue or behaviors over time you're able to kind of coalesce them into a whole that makes sense, character wise. Um, these two, and for me, for the first film, well, for all three of the films, but more for the first one, they believed that they were one. They felt even after separation that they were one who had been cut in half. And that's a really interesting thing to play. That was my favorite aspect of the film, is being able to attempt to put that over in a believable way.
Yeah. Very
Wow.
cool.
Yeah. Wow. How did you know, when you first did Basket Case 1, how did you kind of develop this character of Dwayne and also Belial? Because like you just said, you were two and one. How did you develop that for yourself?
Well, the way I was taught in the theater is you need to have a little bit of a backstory,
Hmm.
and the script gives you some of that stuff. It also gives you hints to a lot of directions you can go in, and the more I always, even with my sculpture, whether it's acting, sculpture, all art. And I'm sure if you spoke to like a classical musician or dancer, they would agree that um, it's like a sauce. You put the longer it's on the back burner simmering, the better it comes out. I always tell with sculpture especially, stone carving is slow. So, and I always am explaining to people, the more time I spend in this, the better it will turn out. And only a portion of that time is spent actually removing material. Um, for example, when I did the Rip Van Winkle at the summit of Hunter Mountain, they have these summer festivals, and the Celtic Festival was a real big one in those days. And I'm up there one day, and this guy comes comes wandering down the path from the lift, and he's got a whole stack of cups, which means he's had about 8 or 10 beers, and his face is bright red. And I'm sitting there in front of this piece of stone, half carved, and I have the file open in my lap, and I have a book, that I'm looking at, and I have 2 color pencils in my hand, making marks on the stone. And he says, taking a break, eh? But in fact, that contemplative time that you spend on a piece, that's the important part. The actual material removal. We've taught 4-year-olds how to carve with an air hammer. That's the easy part. Knowing what part to take off and what part to leave. That's the hard part. And in acting, it's very similar. All arts share the same kind of tenets, really. Dance, I'm sure. Well, I just completely lost my train of thought. My apologies.
It happens to us all the
All the
time.
time.
All the time.
All the
We go off the
time.
rails on the show.
I
so much.
know.
The point is that if you do the work, it turns out better than if you just wing it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were saying, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your art. I know you do sculpture and stone carving. How did you get into that?
That's a fun story too. I was still at the academy this would have been 1974.
Okay.
Annette and I went up to the Little Carnegie Cinema, which was around the corner from Carnegie Hall. It used to be a little tiny dive theater that showed, art films, Fellini and Ingmar Bergman, and they were showing an old Ken Russell film called The Savage Messiah, which is about a real carver at the time of World War I, Henri Gautier. And in the course of the film, they showed a real carver's hands working a close-up, working a block of marble. And I was so turned on to and by the idea of a stone as a plastic medium. I started, so the academy was on Madison between 30th and 31st. And on, that would have been 30th, between Madison and Park, literally less than a block away, was the Sculpture House, which was a sculpture supply place for like teachers and stuff, right? Mail order kind of. So I started walking back and forth and looking in the window, trying to figure it out. After I did that 40 or 50 times, then I finally worked up the nerve to walk in and walk around and then leave. And after I did that 40 times, maybe, when I had my nerve worked up enough and had saved up what I was hoping was enough money, I went in and asked some poor sales girl every question I could imagine.
Uh-huh.
And I walked out with a hammer and 3 basic chisels. I found a rock on this sidewalk in the East Village. I set up a workbench on the west side. This would have been 30th and 11th Avenue. It was under the railroad tracks. It's called the High Line now, and it's a real ritzy neighborhood now. In those days, again, it was abandoned, derelict neighborhood with just the girls on 11th Avenue. And but I set up a workbench underneath the railroad tracks so I'd be out of the weather and stuff. And the first moment that I touched steel to stone, I had this incredible experience, revelation, epiphany, well, however you want to call it, as if angels were guiding my hands, that this was what I was meant to do. So I consider myself very lucky. I found my path early on, and that moment has powered me to this day.
And you said that was in the early to mid 70s. That
That
was
would be
before Basket
74.
Case.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that
And
so
I
you
had
already
actually
knew that this is what you were going to want to do before Basket Case even came into your life.
I had actually given up acting in favor of sculpture when Frank called, and it was just too good an idea to pass up.
We are
Yeah.
so glad that you said yes.
I know. Thank
But
you.
Thank you.
if you had said no, who would we have for Dwayne? I can't imagine anybody
I
else.
can't imagine anybody else as him. I
Oh,
can't.
thank you. Thank you very much.
It's so true. Yeah. Well, what's your favorite? Well, we talked about like you love the part of they are two separated people who are actually whole. What
Mhm.
else did you love about Dwayne as a person and a character?
Well, Dwayne is like in the first film. It's his. He's been like let out of prison, and into the
Yeah.
world. Uh, Shooting the scene of me walking through Times Square was really interesting because Times Square in those days was really sleazy,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
the guys in these shops did not want us pointing cameras at them.
Sure.
We were threatened and shit. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
But I forgot the question already. Sorry.
Just other things you like about Dwayne as a character and a
Oh
person.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So he's been like released into the world,
Yeah.
and he's going to kill somebody and meets this girl. That's a really fun thing to do, acting
Yeah.
wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like, in part 1, Belial was a puppet, and then in part 2, it was more of an animatronic situation
Yeah.
sometimes. How was that different working with a puppet in the animatronic?
Well, I get asked this a lot. What's it like to work with an effect as opposed to another actor? It's not that different, really, because if I'm acting with you in a play, I'm playing a part and you're playing a part. So it's theater.
Mhm.
The only difference being is that you have to add the personality of the other. And that's one of the interesting things about Basket Case is essentially I'm playing both parts
Mhm.
because there is no reaction from Belial. So I'm giving him all of his reactions with my reaction to him. Um, there's a one scene where I'm just before we kill Needleman, I think, where I dump him out onto the floor. You know, he's heavy, so I used to weight the basket when I carried it around so it would be authentic,
Oh.
and
Yeah.
I couldn't do that when I dump him out, but I spent a fair amount of time working with that to give the effect that there was weight in the basket and then there wasn't.
Mhm.
um, it's those kind of little details, like cooking or detailing an automobile. It's the details that really make something live.
Mhm.
Definitely. And would you consider yourself a horror fan? Are you into horror movies?
Not so much the new horror, especially,
Sure.
which seems to me mostly gore and effects. Um, See, I'm a musician as well, and the thing
Mhm.
is, you know, a guitarist gets a new effects box, right? A wah wah or a digital delay or whatever it is. That's all. That's on every song, all the whole song, every song, for a couple of weeks, and then you slowly start dialing it back to the
Yeah.
point where it's an effect. A lot of film today is all effects,
Mhm.
and one that's going to be really dated in 10 years, and two, film is really about a story. You're telling a story.
Mhm.
That has to be the most important, or it's not going to really work. There has to be a real story. No matter what you're into, whether it's Star Wars, there's a story there. There's real
Mhm.
characters, and there's a story arc. And without that, it's just effects.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
did I-
I would also love to know, how did you find out, and what was your emotions when you found out Basket Case was going to be restored by the Museum of Modern Art?
oh, that's fantastic. I was completely blown away. They were. at the time they were interested in documenting and preserving the East Village scene that was going on at the time, and Frank was really involved in that. Um, I think it's astounding. We're part of the permanent collection at MoMA. It's just unbelievable. Yeah, we went to it. They had a showing when the restoration was completed. They had a showing. We all went
Yeah.
down there. I hadn't
Yeah.
seen, for example, the set of the hotel, the room and the
Mhm.
hotel hallway were a set that we built in Uji's loft. I haven't seen him, I don't know, 30 years or something. So that was a lot of fun. Uh, it was
And
very
it
cool.
looked great. It looked great too. Looked so cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, going
There
back,
was not to digress,
no, go
but
ahead.
there was when Frank was doing that. He told me this story. They were working on the film portion of the restoration, and the main restorer guy called him up and said, "There's this one scene," and he described it, and Frank knew exactly what he's talking about. There's a hair that's in there that was part of this, and it was on the 16 millimeter print.
Yeah.
And the guy said, we could take that out if you want. And Frank said, no, that's in the 16 millimeter print. You got to leave it. And
Oh,
the guy loved that he
I do
wanted.
Oh,
too.
I do
Yeah,
too. I'm glad it stayed.
yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
Yeah. So have you got to see sit in on any cool showings of Basket Case? Any of them? Have you gotten to like experience the audience's kind of reaction in real time like that?
you know, the Waverly Theater in Lower Manhattan used to have midnight shows. And Rocky Horror Picture Show, of course,
Yeah.
is
Mm-hmm.
the king of midnight shows.
Oh
They were
yeah.
there, I think, a year and a half or 2 years, maybe something in that vicinity.
Yeah.
Basket Case was second place with 13 months, and I went
Nice.
to one of those midnight showings. Excuse me. Now I had a mustache at the time in one of these things, right?
Uh-huh.
And short hair, and I had short hair too at that time.
Yeah.
So um, the people in line had baskets and doctor's coats scattered with blood, and it was amazing. And so we're standing in line, and the guy in front of me does like this, like 2 or 3 times. And I don't know if he recognized me or not. That doesn't matter. But when we got in and saw the film, the audience was better than the film. It was really, yeah.
Were
Oh,
they
Basket
talking
Case.
back to the screen Rocky Horror style?
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say Basket Case fans, we're like die hard, super die hard.
Uh-huh. Well, Frank
Yeah.
Excellent.
Henenlotter fans are super diehard.
Oh
We love us some
yeah.
Frankenhooker and all
Love
the
some
other movies as
Frankenhooker.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
So,
I'm going. One of the cons I'm doing this season is Knoxville, Tennessee in June, and Frank and Patty Millen are going to be there.
Oh, fun. Love to meet them.
I know. Yeah,
Sounds
I
like a
got to
good
meet
one.
Patty last year and I got Jamie an autograph. And
Love
instead of
her.
like the picture, I'm like, can I just have you like say hi to Jamie on a video, like a cameo, you know? And she did, and she was so sweet. So I'm like,
Oh,
I got your
she did
present.
more than say hi. She said want a date and everything. So
Oh, nice, excellent,
yeah,
excellent.
definitely.
You
Yeah, it
know
was more than
the
I could have asked for on that
Yeah.
experience. So,
Basket Case 2 and Frankenhooker were filmed back to back. I don't know if you
hmm
guys know this one.
I read
yep.
that.
They they rented a one of the buildings on the pier down in the West Village, and it was a huge, just empty space, and um, like the the attic where Annie Ross says, "Our sanctuary has been violated."
Yes.
They built that in there, and
Wow.
then they did Frankenhooker. So
Wow.
um, I don't know if you guys have ever seen them making special effects, but Frank and Gabe, I think, are insane because they decided to do 2 films
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
back with dozens of effects.
Yeah.
And not too
Gosh.
long after that, when was that? That was 1990, right? Something like that.
Something
I
like
thought
Um,
it was
that.
94, the second one.
maybe, and not too long after that, or maybe right before, Gabe Dunnan did Leprechaun. Again,
Yes.
tons of effects in that too. That was right around that
Totally.
time
Yeah.
also, and that's how I know his work first.
Yeah.
Because I love me
Yeah.
some Leprechaun.
Yeah.
I'm weird. I like someone getting killed by bouncing up and down on a pogo stick. What can I say?
Who doesn't?
I always wanted a pogo stick when I was a kid, and that is why.
Uh-huh.
Ah,
And then my
the
folks
Ah.
got
truth
me one,
comes
and I
out.
was
I
and
know.
I
Who
was
was
very
saying they
good
weren't
at it.
crazy?
I was very good at that pogo stick, by the way. It was awesome. But that was the
Oh my
reason I
goodness.
wanted the pogo sticks. No, no, Gabe's effects are like wow.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So good.
He did a really interesting film called Saint Bernard. Did you see that one?
Mm-mm.
No. Uh-uh.
Oh, check it out. Check it out. Saint
Oh,
Bernard, Gabe Bartalos.
Wow.
definitely. Definitely.
Another film you did, which I saw recently, was what was it called? Rapturous or
Yes.
something like
Yeah. Yeah.
that. Did I get that right? Is
Yep. Kamal Ahmed. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Who, by the way, fun fact about Kamala, Jamie, you'll like this. He played the voice on the telephone in Terrifier.
What? Oh, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah, I
I
went
didn't know that.
down this like Kamala rabbit hole when we did Terrifier, and then I found that, and then I went to Basket Case, and and then you and anyway, it was an interesting couple of hours on the internet for me.
Sounds like it.
He
But
was
I really
also.
love that movie. It was really, really well made.
See
It's
that.
newer,
I thought so.
Jamie.
I think
Okay.
Kamal is a great filmmaker.
Mhm.
He was also one half of a duo, comedy duo, like a prank phone duo called the Jerky Boys. That was
Yeah.
Kamal Ahmed.
Fun.
And he's a bass player as well.
So you guys can
Oh,
rock
my
out.
favorite
Yeah,
instrument.
but
Yeah.
he's a genius at casting. He has a very good eye for type and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So you
so
were great at
Raptorius,
that.
Debbie Rochon,
Yeah.
um, um,
He
God,
our
there's a lot of
Kamala played the cab driver. He had a cameo
yeah, yeah.
in
Ah,
it as
Uh,
well. Joe Bob.
Joe Bob was in it, so I got to hang out with
what?
him a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Ah,
So it kind
I
of came
gotta
full
check that out.
circle with you and Joe Bob, since Joe
Yeah.
Bob is responsible, I heard, for getting the uncut version of Basket Case. Is that true?
He was our first true champion. Yeah, he
Ah,
um, he had seen it and liked it and wanted to have it on his drive-in show, I think then.
Mhm.
yeah.
And Frank said, it's cut, and he wouldn't show the cut version. So Frank snuck him an uncut version,
Oh,
which was very popular.
yes.
And so the distributors finally started to dawn on them, and they just quietly started replacing all the cut versions with uncut versions. And when where we had been, the film had been tanking before that, suddenly
Mhm.
it took off. So thank you, Joe Bob Briggs.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so if there was going to be another basket case, let's just say they made a basket case 4, they put another one out there. What would you like to see happen in that?
Well, I've actually been working on a treatment for years. Um,
Oh.
for me, I'd like to play Belial rather than it be a practical effect. I'd like to make
Mhm.
Belial into a real character. Uh, he won't be a different character, but he'll be a real character. I got to play him the one time in the second film. The scene where I tell him, where Dwayne tells him he wants to go off and live somewhere, and Belial laughs. That's me in a
Yeah.
Belial hat.
Ah.
And I'd like to do a much more. It would be much more realistic and much more psychologically twisted,
Mhm.
because if imagine this were a real situation and they were cut in half,
Yeah.
um, and also all of the baby Belials are now in their mid-20s.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
all hell is about to break loose.
Oh,
I
we would
remember
watch that. We would watch
we
that on
would.
repeat.
We would. I remember when we just recorded part 3 more recently, and I think, Jamie, when we were talking about what we would want in a part 4, we're like, a revenge story with the little
Yeah.
babies.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We want to see baby mayhem. Yeah, but you're right. They'd be like 20 now.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
We'll take 20-year-old mayhem.
But how large would they grow, you know? So
Yeah.
there's no telling what they would look like or how big they would get. They could
Yeah, we have
stay
to get
like little
Gabe in on that
krites.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would stay like little krites, you know, or they'd be like big Belial, who
Yeah.
knows,
Who
right?
knows?
Yeah.
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 So let's go back, if we may, to your stone carving. Can we
Oh,
talk some
thank
more
you.
about that? Do
Sure.
you still do the hunter stone carving seminars, or is that not a
Yes,
thing
we're
anymore?
we're entering our 16th season with that this year.
Wow.
Wow.
And we have a website. It's freehscs.com. And I have a website, my own personal website.
Ooh. Oh. Love it.
KevinVanH.com.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm still doing it. We again, it's our 16th season. This year it's going to be August 20. Man, I should know this. August 22nd through the 26th, I believe. 21st through the 26th. It takes place in the mountaintop region of the Catskill Mountains in Hunter, New York. It's a free stone carving class, and the thing about stone carving that I think always surprises people is you think, well, it's stone, it's hard, it's got to be really hard to do, right? But
Yeah.
it's not. Primitive people did this with a sharp rock held in their hand 170,000 years ago, and we have much better tools.
True.
We've had, like I said, we've had a four. I have a 4-year-old carving with an air hammer because the actual material removal is fairly rudimentary. Again, it's all about
Yeah.
what you leave, what you take off.
Yeah.
So yeah,
What are the
yeah.
requirements of someone? Obviously, uh, 4 is a good age. How young would you go?
Uh, Again, that's I've had 10, 12-year-olds who
Mhm.
couldn't do it, or
Yeah.
it's too hard, or
Sure.
were bored by it. It depends a lot. Below about 10 years old, it really is hit or miss with a kid.
Mhm.
Um, but anyone, I've had big burly firemen say, I'm not artistic. I can't draw a stick man. So I help. I sit down and there's a lesson. We do a lesson, 3 basic exercises with a hammer and chisel, then the same 3 exercises with an air hammer and chisel. And the thing is, really, it's a new tool. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, if you've never ice skated and you go ice skating, it's awkward at first. But if we can keep that tool in their hand till they get it, there's like a
Mhm.
click that happens, and suddenly they, oh yeah, I get this now.
Yeah.
They've got it. So if I can get them to classical carved letter is called a V groove letter because it's carved in a V shape. If they can do a V groove letter, a curved letter like a C or an O, so if they can hold that angle on a curved letter, they're ready to start. And we give them a stone and some tools and cruise around and offer our 2 cents worth every few minutes. And people love it, because again, they think it's something that only could happen in the Renaissance or if you were Michelangelo, and that's not the case at all. So they leave having done something they would have never imagined they could pull off, and that's really
Wow.
fun.
That's
Wow.
lovely. Okay, so you are multi-talented when it comes to art. You know many art forms. You got the stone
Thank
carving, you have sculpture, you have music, you have acting, you have theater. Any other art forms that you're still looking to explore?
you. Well, I've played guitar or rock music all my life.
Yeah.
Uh, as a matter of fact, I was going to ask you this. I'm going to be selling two 12 strings. I was going to put them on Facebook, but
Oh.
uh, there'll be a lag time between now and when you show this recording.
Probably a few days.
I was
I'm
gonna
gonna
say
go
probably
edit
a
it,
little bit. Yeah.
but yeah, a few
Mhm.
days.
If you want, I'll send you a picture. We just took a picture of me and the two guitars today. It can be an exclusive for you. You're the first.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm selling an acoustic 12 string and an electric 12 string.
How
Okay.
much are they
And I
going
wanted the
for?
basket case fans to have the first shot at
How much are
Hey.
they going for?
it. Curi- Curious inquiries only, please.
Yes.
You know,
My,
and
my my favorite guitar is my Gretsch. I have it's a '64 Gretsch White Falcon.
oh,
That's my main guitar.
your baby.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
I'm
actually
a
I did a thing with what con was that? I think it was um, Pop Rock Con. Do you know that
Okay.
one?
No.
yeah, I know
Uh-uh.
of it.
Yeah. Felicia Rose Esposito was
Hmm.
there, and
Yeah.
Awesome.
so her and a couple of friends did backing vocals on a song that I did, playing that
Oh,
guitar. It's out on
oh,
YouTube somewhere. Yeah. I can
how
send you a shot
fun.
from
Wow.
too.
Yes, please.
Yes. I'm gonna text it to her and say, "Look what Kevin just sent me." It's
Gretsch
amazing.
are fantastic guitars, and
They
they're
are.
they're really
Yeah.
undervalued for what they
They are.
are.
And I grew up on, the rock and roll, but I really loved the Stray Cats, right? When I was a kid.
Brian Setzer.
And
I
Yeah.
have a great.
yes, they're
So
mhm.
this would have been, oh man, late '70s, very early '80s, maybe. I went up to the Upper West Side to a club that was up there called Hurrah, and I saw this band called the Bloodless Pharaohs, which was Brian Setzer and a group of guys
Aw.
doing intense psychedelic rock. It was
Wow.
great. They were
Oh.
spectacular. The very next season, he's back with rockabilly. Such a
Mhm.
change, a complete turnaround musically. Um, and he was really good in the rockabilly too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he is also responsible for kicking up the prices on these old Gretsch
I
guitars. So
Oh.
imagine.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Check it out though.
Yeah.
Bloodless
Yeah.
Pharaohs.
Oh, I
I'm
will.
definitely gonna
He
check
is
that out.
he is so talented from that to the
Yeah.
rockabilly and then the swing resurgence. And I'm a big band fan in
Of
general. She'll
course.
tell
Yeah.
you I'm
Yeah.
a
She loves
big
it.
nerd. I love the swing and the Broadway show tunes. I am the enigma of a con. Everyone's like metal, and I'm like, "Hello, Dolly, anyone?" It's so funny,
Oklahoma,
and
South Pacific.
Yes.
right. Yeah, and so but I love the swing, and I really got into that. So then he had his Brian Setzer orchestra, I think it was 18-piece orchestra, and then
Yeah.
he morphed into more country again with I think it was the Nashvillians, and I don't even know what he's
Oh.
doing now. That was 10 years ago, so I don't know what he's doing now, but he has done so many different genres. It's amazing.
Yeah. Great guitarist.
Wow.
Oh my god,
Ah.
genius.
And just on
Genius.
the topic of music, okay, I have to know, like, what's been a favorite concert that you've attended? Because it sounds like you've been to some good ones.
All time favorite? Oh man.
Yeah.
Um, hmm, hmm. Well, in that, God, that would have been 75 cover of both Time and Newsweek the same week.
Mhm.
and he was playing a set of sold out concerts at the Bottom Line, which is a tiny little room in Lower Manhattan.
Wow.
And uh, this girl I knew had seen him in college and really liked him. So we went and stood in line all afternoon on the sidewalk down there. Um, as it started to be evening, the whole band pulls up in a checker. No, the whole band pulls up in a limousine. Everyone's cheering. And then after the limousine drives off, this beat up old checker drives up, and Springsteen gets out of this checker cab and
Ah.
stands on the roof, and we're all screaming and stuff. So
Ah.
we stood on the street and we listened to this muffled first show, and that show gets out. All the people go out, and then they start letting people into the second show, and we're getting closer and closer and closer. And then the line stops. All the seating is
Oh.
gone. We're pretty close, but all the seating is gone, and it's standing
Ah.
room only.
Uh,
So we're
yeah.
inching closer and closer. We were like some of the last people to get in standing room to the second show. And I 15 feet from the stage, and probably one of the most impressive rock and roll shows I've ever seen. It was a great showman when he was young. I haven't seen him, in a long time, but that was a great show. He had Clarence Clemens was playing saxophone, but at the Ritz in the East Village. Um, it was their second trip over, so that would have been maybe 80 or 82, something like that. No, it couldn't have been
Mhm.
82, maybe 80.
Mhm.
Bits. They were like and I was so jealous because they were so good. So yeah,
Oh,
those are,
wow.
those are high.
Sounds great.
Wow. That sounds so amazing. Oh my God.
Uh,
I did have to say that my coworker sent me a text because she knows I was very excited about our interview tonight, though she's never seen Basket Case. And she
she shared the text with me already, so I know. I know.
she said to me, imagine everyone naked. And I thought that was hilarious because we've kind of already seen you naked running through the streets. We had Naked Kevin. How was that like to film?
That's it. This is another great production story because the script called for Belial running through the street, and as soon as that fact, we realized that that was not going to be even remotely possible, and Frank was really disappointed in that, and
Yeah.
was how to solve it, and so back burner for a little while. And one night he calls me up and he has this idea, which ended up on screen, and it's such a perfect and elegant solution to that problem, because it is belong through the streets, but um, done in a non-effect way. So it was February. It was cold as shit. Um, and again, Tribeca in those days was this abandoned, derelict neighborhood. When rush hour was over, it was dead. There was nothing going on down there. So we figured we'd give it a shot. We swept the streets so I wouldn't blast or anything, and we did car at both ends. And it wouldn't be my first choice for a February evening, but
sure.
in the context, it worked. We went for it, and
Jamie, do you want to wrap us up with a final question?
Yeah, so I guess we've talked about it a little bit, but wrapping up, just what does it feel like to have Basket Case remain such a legacy and still like warm so many of our horror people's hearts? Like, how does it feel to just be a part of this still?
Yeah, that's kind of indescribable. Not a real big horror fan. My genre was more science fiction,
Mhm.
always. But um, the fact that something I worked on still resonates, being our culture is seems like momentary obsolescence is kind of the routine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm humbled and honored and thankful, and I just can't believe it. So thank you, fans. For me, please.
Oh. Well, we are humbled and honored that you would spend your evening with little ol' us. I
I
mean, it's
know.
been
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you so much. Uh, all right, guys. Thank you so much for listening and or
Okay.
watching, whatever you're doing, this interview with the fantastic Kevin Van Hentenryck. But this has been so fun, and we're just so
Yes.
honored.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.